Lounge with Travefy Academy, where we get to hear from travel industry voices and experts to learn more about their story and what they see on the horizon for travel professionals. And I'm Stephanie Grice, and our guest today is Jennifer Jacob, who's COO and co-founder of Teak HQ. So welcome to the lounge, Jennifer. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I know this is so exciting. I always love chatting with you. We were just saying we've had 3 webinars and this is the first podcast, which I can't believe.
I know.
I don't know why I thought we've already done this before, but we haven't. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. My favorite run-in with you thus far, though, is when I was sitting across from you having coffee and I was like, wait a minute. I know that voice.
Yes, it's the voice. I know. That high-pitched voice.
Yeah, you were at AFTA in Puerto Rico and we just like totally came upon each other happenstance. We were both with like our significant other and it was just wild, a wild coincidence. So I'm glad to be here with you and I wish it were in person like then, but you know, I'll take virtual.
I know, but I did get to meet your little baby. Well, it was a baby then. Yeah.
She was a baby. She is not so much a baby right now. I mean, I guess she is. She's a year and a half, but yeah. It feels like it's going fast. So
oh, I bet. Yeah. And hopefully we get to see each other in person again soon. Because it is always fun. And also speaking about this, like all these topics, we've talked about different topics before, like in webinars and like you have a slew of knowledge of so many things. But today I'm excited because this is the hot one. There's fire blazing underneath this podcast because it's fees. Like we're talking about fees. But I'm excited for this conversation because fees always a really hot topic. But I like this because you're actually going to explain how you do the math to break down what you should actually be charging. So we talk about this all the time, but we never actually give an answer. We just say like, here's what people do, but it's like, what do you do? What's good for your business? So I'm excited about that.
And often it's so subjective and it's actually not. Like it actually should be a formulaic approach. So we're going to talk about that. But you're right, fees are always a hot topic. And when you propose which topics to, have on the podcast, I'm like, well, let's go with the one that people can't get enough of. And the one that I think people really enjoy hearing different perspectives on always. It's something that you're always refining, fine-tuning in your business. And even as you grow in tenure or specialization, it's something that you can always improve upon. So I don't think it's a topic that ever ages out, no matter how deep into your career you are as a travel advisor.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true in that. And it's always the ever changing and seeing, and especially over the past couple years, it's crazy just the change and, value of people seeing that and all that. But before we get into all that though, can you share first just a little bit about your background, but also how did you find yourself in the travel industry and do what you're doing today?
It's always funny because I feel like people, when they tell their entry point into the travel industry, it's never intentional. Like it's never like they were like, I heard about this profession, travel advising, and I just really pursued it. It's always like I have a passion and I stumbled upon how I could turn this passion into a paycheck. So my passion started back in college when I pursued studying abroad. And my mom was actually like vehemently against me studying abroad. And she was convinced that something terrible was going to happen to me. And I made it happen. I went and got the loan. I got my passport without any guidance. I just did it. And looking back, I'm like, there weren't even cell phones then. So like, how did I even know how to do those things? And how did I navigate Europe with like the map quest printed out and, the collect cards, like as you're calling home and you're calling collect and hoping they pick up. But it's just funny how the world transpires. But all of that really fueled my fire to help others experience the world and remove the intimidation out of travel. Because as someone who had never traveled as a child, it was and still can be intimidating to go someplace new. Now, as I grew up, I actually was going through a very transitional season of life. And someone sent me an article that was how to travel the world for free. And I ended up doing a workaway. If anyone has heard of workaway.info, I ended up sewing curtains, creating fabric covers for sofas, etc., on this olive grove in Umbria. And I used that as my jumping off point for my business. And while I was abroad and staying for free with this family in Umbria, Italy, I started a blog and started creating content to transition from my HR background into a full-time travel planning business. So it really was because I was constantly being distracted by the desire to travel. And I was like, I want to help other people experience the world in this very approachable way. It doesn't have to be this luxury way. But I found myself constantly being pulled into this world of travel. And when I decided to take a sabbatical from real life, if you will, I used that opportunity to catapult myself into the travel industry. And it wasn't until years later that I found a host and actually went full time and started selling commissionable travel. And then I transitioned to an independent travel agency. I recruited classes of advisors and mentored them to become travel advisors. And then that's when we started transitioning to a Virtuoso affiliation. So it really was this, I don't know, like completely organic love of travel that just snowballed into a fully immersive host agency experience. And now we own Teak, and I say we, my business partner and I, we own Teak HQ, which is a consulting and branding firm that helps travel advisors create brand identities and magnetic client experiences. And this came to be because during the pandemic, people really had time to pause and think about how their business was being intentionally grown. And a lot of people hadn't had a time to pause and think about their brand identity, their website, their client experience, because we were just like going at the speed of lightning in 2019. And so in 2020, Robin and I really saw an opportunity to help create turnkey business solutions for advisors and to help remove the failing component of building a travel career. Because as anyone listening to this knows, you learn a lot by failing in travel, and there's not always this roadmap. So we wanted to create a roadmap to help people succeed faster and to modernize their travel businesses if they had already had a career in travel. So I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded way, but it's just this kind of like twisty, turny path that got me into travel.
No, it's super cool. It sounds like you almost just followed the little breadcrumbs into your life, and now here we are. But it's cool because I remember when I met with you and Robin, and I believe it would have been 2020 because it would have been Teak was, I think you had already started, but it was, just it was really evolving, and watching Teak over just the past couple of years is really cool. So it's cool building, and that's why I love this podcast because we get to talk. We're just a community helping each other, and so I love all the stuff that you do. It's really cool. It's cool to see.
Thank you so much. I ended up selling my travel agency in 2022 in order to pursue Teak full time. And we just really believe that we can help elevate the industry. We have a podcast of our own, obviously, and we just want to really compound what everyone else is doing, what you're doing, and what other hosts or resources are doing. And especially what Asta is doing, honestly, like help elevate the industry to a really professional place. And we want to do that in a very comprehensive way. So that's our main mission, is to just help people elevate, modernize, and create a brand and a business that they're really proud of.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And on that, so the topic today of fees, do you typically see so before we get into all of the meat of the conversation, but do you typically see a lot of a lot of people who are coming into the industry or who've already been in it, they're struggling to decide to do fees, or they already do, or have you seen a shift in the industry on that?
Okay, so I'll be the first one to admit I did not believe in fees when I started. Like I was vehemently against fees. And the reason being was because I did want to have this brand that was very approachable. I felt like I was actually, demotivating people from working with me if I were to charge a fee. What happened in 2020, and to your point, the evolution of charging fees was all of a sudden everyone's canceling and those commissions don't come through. Those commissions are a promise, but they're not guaranteed, right? And so if you're not charging your fees up front, you're not safeguarding your income and safeguarding the work that you're doing with the promise of that commission. So I found myself, all of a sudden with an empty bank account, if we're going to be completely frank, because I had brought on 7 advisors on February 3rd of 2020.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's kind of wild. You and I are like recording this almost like 4-year anniversary of just the world shutting down. Isn't
You're
that crazy?
right. Whoa, I
March
got
2nd is
goosebumps.
when like things
Yeah.
really hit the fan. So we're February 27th. We're kind of in that limbo week where the dominoes started to fall, but we had not been fully impacted yet. This is when Italy was like really feeling the heat. So anyway, I digress, but that is why I started to really think about fees. And what I did as a host agency owner, we hosted a retreat despite like really revenue being down and it being a massive cost to host a retreat. It was important to me to have retention, but it was more important for me in those people that decided to stay to help them create a career out of this. And so we got our heads together and we created a fee structure and a service suite that fit everyone in the business and gave them the autonomy to choose what base fee level they felt comfortable with. And I'm going to liken this to like a hairstyle, like a hair studio or a salon, because a lot of the time when you go to a hair salon, you can have the professional levels and their service fees are more elevated. And then you can have the people that are just starting their career and they have a lower price point. I think that travel advisors can do very much the same, but you have to decide where your base fee is going to start. And we're going to get into that later. But Stephanie, yes, absolutely. I am seeing that everyone at every level is now starting to look at fees as an integral piece of their revenue and income. And hopefully we are communicating this in an adjacent space to Asta, who has now created this as a best practice in the industry in a way to solidify professionalism as travel advisors. If you are approaching your business in a leisurely way, your clients will approach your business in a leisurely way. And when you create yourself as a professional, that goes in so many different directions. That goes in the direction of having a brand identity that articulates what you do in a confident way. It means valuing your time with service fees. It means having a consistent client experience. And so all of that creates this perfect package, but you cannot charge a fee. Frankly, I'm going to say this might be controversial. You cannot charge a fee if you're not willing to stand behind what you're promising when someone pays that fee. They are paying that fee as an exchange for your service. And until you can stand behind your services confidently, you should not be bringing on clients at all, because your fee is not, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like you don't have a process that's laid out. But anyone at any level should be charging a fee, even if you're introducing this as a starting point of your career. Even if Aunt Sue wants to work with you and she's the first client ever, you should say, I'll give you a family and friends discount because I'm starting my career. But there should always be some kind of value put on your time so that everyone knows from day one, you value your time and you're not giving your time away for free.
No, perfect. Well said. Yeah, it's so true. And yeah, and it has been the industry standard now too of the fees. And I think that's a big thing too, though. It's like, where do you even start? So how do you decide whether you're new to starting or having a fee, or maybe you're like, I don't know if my fee makes sense? Like, how do you approach that?
There are quite a few ways that you should think about fees. And first, I want to say that you should know who you are serving and who you are working with before you ever decide on your fees. So, from a foundational perspective, you should know your specialty and your niche. In order to become invaluable to your clients, you need to be really good at what you do. And that's what people are looking to you for when they sign on and they pay your planning fee. They're saying, I value you as a professional, and I am going to pay this in exchange for your knowledge and the client experience. So you have to be very specialized in what you do. So I'm going to give an example because I just feel like I'm not big on concepts. I really appreciate like tangible takeaways. So I personally was specialized in Italy. It was my passion. It's what I love. And because I was so specialized in Italy, I knew it intimately. I knew the logistics. I was knowledgeable on the products. I kept in touch with suppliers, and I could match make my clients not only to hotels, but to specific suppliers. I elevated my ability to charge more. I knew more and I could charge more. And that's just a natural progression in any career, right? If you are a lawyer and you're starting out, you're probably going to charge less than when you are actually retiring and you've become super tenured in your career and specialized. So if you liken it to any other career, I would say at least start somewhere and you can always change your fee. Now, so I've kind of talked about tenure. That's one tenet of creating a fee structure. The next is your niche. If you are going to do a multi-leg FIT approach to business, then I would say you are going to probably create a foundational baseline fee and then upcharge for complexity. If you are doing a sun and sand, you may do a flat fee because they're going to one spot. If you are going to do cruises, you may have a flat fee because they're going on one cruise, and then maybe you'll do an upcharge for the complexity on the before and after, like the post, the pre and post part of that. So it really does depend on your niche as well. I would actually look to colleagues within your community and find out what people are doing. That doesn't mean you have to do it. Grain of salt, because I believe that being great in business means that you can be a disruptor. However, you might want to look at the comparables in your specific niche. Now, the next thing is geography and where you're getting your clients, because I will share that I am from a small hometown where people didn't travel internationally very much. They did not value the professionalism that went with a travel advisor. They were willing to go to Costco or Expedia. It just wasn't a normal thing to seek out a professional resource when it came to traveling, and they weren't traveling in a complex way that they felt required, professional insight. So I had to start marketing outside of my hometown. So I think you have two choices in that situation. You can either speak to the demographic that you want to and market yourself either virtually or find another geographical area that is aligned with what you want to sell, or you can follow where the life is. In that situation, I could have followed where the life is. I could have continued to market to my hometown. I could have done cruises and all inclusives, and I could have probably had a better chance of increasing my book of business by lowering my fee. So you do have options, but you need to be aware of the financial norms in your marketing sphere. So wherever you're marketing to. So those are just a few things that I would say you need to evaluate before creating a fee. Now, do you want me to go into the formulaic approach? Do you want me to just dive right in?
Yeah, that's what I'm curious. Yeah, I'm like in my head, like doing little math additions, like, oh, what shall it be? Yeah, I'm curious.
It's almost like, the movie Beautiful Mind, where
Yes,
it's like all
that's
the
what it
strings.
is. Yes, that's exactly what this is. Like, and it's all to figure out the perfect fee formula.
Yeah. Okay. So now the formulaic approach, because in order for a business to work, your needs as an advisor have to be that. As a business owner, you need to be paid as a priority, and you also need to pay the bills. Okay, like pay the business bills. So those are actually two different components, right? And we're going to talk about three different buckets of expenses, and you're going to work backwards. So to start out, you are going to consider one, we're big on profit first. So I'm just going to start with, if you have not heard of Profit First, I would read the book Profit First. This is not financial advice, but it's just foundational knowledge as to where I'm coming from so that you can understand the context of what I'm talking about. The concept is you pay yourself first a rational living wage, and then you base your expenses off of what you can afford, not the other way around. Whereas a lot of advisors are like, okay, I'm going to get this technology and I'm going to outsource this and I'm going to get branding. And then maybe if anything's left over, I'll take the crumbs of income. And that's just, it's not a sustainable practice. And it's not how the rest of the world is living, right? Like the rest of the world isn't just thinking, okay, I'll take whatever crumbs is left over, because that doesn't pay the mortgage. So the profit first method is you create what you need as a living wage. That's going to be what you need for your mortgage, your bills, and to put food on the table. Okay. You need to know that number. The next bucket is going to be your business expenses. So that's your technology, that may be affiliate fees. And then the third bucket is obviously your commission splits, if that's applicable to you. So you need to account for that, because when revenue comes in, a lot of the time we're like, okay, that's a $2,000 commission. Okay, but are you on a 70-30 split? Are you on an 80-20? So we have these kind of like rose-colored glasses on when we see the number, because we see it as the wholesaler puts it on the invoice line, but we're not actually seeing that line item that's coming through on our CRM, which is a very different number, right? So those three buckets, your personal expenses, your business expenses, and your commission split, you need to account for. And that is going to equate to one lump sum number as to what you need to achieve for your year. Then you're going to work backwards. Okay. So let's do some like really big picture numbers. Okay. Let's say that that number that I just calculated, this is just for hypotheticals, is $100,000. All right. Now you're going to take that $100,000 and you are going to divide it essentially by how many trips you think is going to be realistic for the year. And that way you at least know how many trips you need to make that a reality. Now that number of trips divided essentially needs to create that 100,000. So if you say, I want to do, oh gosh, I'm going to do some math here.
Good old math.
I know, gosh, I'm not my strong suit. So let's say that you, to get to that $100,000, and remember that $100,000 is not just straight income to you. That's a compilation of all revenue that's coming into your bank account. But this is going to be split into those three buckets, like I mentioned. But in order to make that number an actuality, you know that you can achieve 50 trips per year. Okay. So that 50 divided into that 100,000 means that you need to make $2,000 per trip, which means that you need to have a combined result of $2,000 between the fee and the commission that you bring in. Okay. So now you at least know what you need to bring in per trip. Now, the question is, what is your average commission per trip that you're seeing? And this is where you need to look historically on the trips that you've been booking. So I would say now you know that you need to book at least one trip a week. It needs to bring in a combined revenue of $2,000. And what does that commission normally look like? If that commission is normally $1,500, then you know you need to actualize $500 for the planning fee. So this feels complicated and it does require time tracking. So you're actually going to need to know how much time is going into each trip in order for you to realize what is a realistic number of trips you can book and still have a personal life. You also need to know all of the numbers that create your expenses and be able to forecast out what that commission split looks like. But that is a jumping off point. We actually do have a spreadsheet that we created that helps people get to this number. But in all simplicity terms, I say simplistic. Yeah. That's not simple, right? But that is a very simplified, watered down version for what could probably take you quite a bit of time to look into. But it's a necessary number. It's necessary for you to know what you're going to be paid. And so many advisors, the number one thing that we're seeing is that advisors don't know what they're going to be paid for the year, and they have not defined what they want to be paid for the year.
Yeah, and it's hard because you have to sit and think. But you know what's so interesting? I love the breakdown, even though I'm not a math person either. But then when the numbers get broken down, I'm like, oh, okay, it's clear as day now. Like it makes
Yeah.
so much sense. And to know that number, I mean, we talk about too, I mean, just with anything when you have goals and you have to break them down and thinking, but it really does help at the end of the day, knowing like, I need to get this many trips, like the way that you
Mhm.
broke that down, like just the example. And it's almost like a trip a week. And so then, if you're getting towards a few months into the year, quarter, you reviewing, what you've done, you're like, oh, I need to catch up a little bit on it, or like that is so strong knowing that information, which is
We
crazy.
sh- we shy away from information because we think it's going to be bad news.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the flip side of this. Okay. So let's say you actually on record, like on average, you are booking maybe 2 trips a week. Okay, but once you know this information and you're like, oh, I actually don't have to book 2 trips a week in order to actualize all of this revenue that I need in order to have a good wage to meet my expenses. It gives you the power to say, I don't want to work with that client anymore. Or I can niche down even harder and become even more valuable in that specific area. Or, you know what? Instead of taking that extra trip, I'm going to refer that out to someone who I have a partnership with and I get a kickback for that referral because I want to go on vacation and I want to be present with my family. And once you release yourself from the unknown, you release yourself from the requirement to grind because you just never know your number. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are just grinding because they don't know the number they need to get to. So they're just hoping that by working their tails off constantly and being on call and completely burning out, that maybe they'll meet that number. And a lot of people don't know what their income is until they see it on their tax returns.
Yeah. Why do we do that? I wonder because I think like it is so easy to do. It's so easy. Like we just just grind, grind, grind. And you're just like, I just have to work as hard as I possibly can. And I love that what you said, like you could even it's a ever evolving thing because you can start to niche down, like you said, or you can
Yeah.
start realizing like, oh my gosh, I actually don't have to be doing this that much, or I don't need those type of clients that at the end of the day, like are just too much and they just add so much more time for me. That's powerful. That's really cool.
It is. And if you were to extrapolate the data from last year's bookings and sort it from highest revenue to lowest and look at the top 25% and say, not even the top 25%, just basically go down the list until you say, at what point in this list did I start to lose joy and fulfillment from these bookings? And that may even be your minimum budget threshold, right? Like if I'm looking and I'm like, okay, this one 50,000, then this one 20,000, then I get to the point where it's like $9,000 and I start to see my happiness meter, go down where I'm like, I didn't love working with that client. And everyone underneath this, like, I don't even remember their name. That's how hustled I was like, I didn't even have time to get to know this client intimately. So they can't in any way feel like a VIP at this point because if I don't even remember their name, they're just a number to me, even though I'm marketing that they're not, obviously. So when do you stop feeling fulfilled by those clients? And what threshold can you create in your business so that everyone that comes into your book of business, you feel excited about, you feel passionate about, you get to sell what you want to sell, you get to sell to whom you want to sell to. So that's the power of knowing your numbers. It liberates you from feeling like you are completely employed by someone else when you actually became self-employed to control your time. And here we are feeling
Yeah.
controlled by our clients.
Yeah, that's so true. It is. It's like, yeah, it's just always figuring it's always a work in progress. And
It is.
and I love that. And now question for you, what I keep thinking
Yeah.
is the what what if you're brand new? What does
Okay.
that look like? How does that work? Or is that just like you really just have to start laying out your vision, what you're hoping for, and then just kind of coming back and always reviewing the numbers? Or like what's the best way to do that when you're really new?
If I could start over again tomorrow, I would write every number down on paper that I knew would be a recurring fee. And I would ask colleagues within my host agency, what are the one-off fees that have taken you by surprise, or the biggest line items in your budget that you didn't anticipate when you started out? And I would create a budget, an expense sheet. Before I even had that data, I would at least get comps from other colleagues. And I think so many people are just optimistic, or they maybe think they're different. And you can be different. You can be unique in your value to your clients and unique in your business approach. But there are some things that are always going to remain the same. And those things are typically legal fees, website recurring fees, your technology platforms that you're utilizing, like Travify, your accounting fees, like professional fees. Those are things that everyone has in common. So even if your business has a completely different model, you can still glean that information from someone else. The other thing that you will absolutely know, even as a new advisor, you know what you need to make in order to pay your bills at home. So you can still do this. The thing that you need to know is that you are valuable even as a new advisor. So I think that's where we get to, Stephanie, is that a lot of advisors, they have the information and the access to information, but they may not have the confidence to think that their time is yet worth anything. And that's incorrect. You can always increase your salary as anyone increases their knowledge, their experience. They are worth more in their profession, but you still have to pay the bills. So, for example, if I started out and I said, okay, I can make it work for $50,000. I have a roommate that allows me to go out once in a while. I'm, again, just arbitrary number, $50,000. That does not mean that the next year I can't say, you know what? I'm going to give myself a $10,000 raise because I've increased my value at 20%, because now I have suppliers, I have experience. And so even if you create a 5-year roadmap to get to the salary that you want to get to, you still have to start somewhere, because what is a job that you would accept for the amount that you're paying yourself? I would ask yourself that. Like, if you are only paying yourself a question mark at the end of the month, what other job would you accept that they're like, we'll just pay you whatever is left over at the end of the month? Like, that's not a way of going through life, and it's not a way to treat yourself. So even if you're starting out, you have to define what you're worth. You have to define what you need to make, and you have to create a plan. So I think the next question that I feels organic is like, how do you introduce those fees, even if you've never charged a fee before, or you're starting out, right? Can we go there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because that is always the next one, is like, how do I do that now? It's all fun, but then how do you do it?
How do you do it? And especially, how do you do it if you have 5 years of not charging fees? And then
true. Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden to your book of business, you like hit them with an invoice and they're like, wait, what, Stephanie? Why are you charging me? You've never charged me before.
Yeah. And you have to like confront them. And it's probably a very terrifying feeling. But yeah. So like, how do you prepare yourself for that?
I think it's all about educating your audience. This comes in so many different ways. And with Teak, we're big advocates of educating clients before you ever get them on the phone. So I'll do both approaches. So let's start with the person that has tenure and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, well, I've been booking for 5 years. I have a great book of business, but you're right. I need to make this work for me more. This is when you lean on your email list and you say, exciting announcement, and you make it about them. I always say, anytime you are scared to share something with your client, share with them how it is better for them. And when you say, I am charging a service fee, but it is so that I can prioritize my best clients and give you even more attention and specialize even more in what you are passionate about doing, it becomes about them. It's just like when I say, like, I don't pick up my phone because I make sure that people are putting it on Calendly. Like, I am doing it for them because when I'm not on the phone, I'm servicing the sale, and it allows me to give them 100% of my attention while I'm on the phone. The fees are the exact same way. You are making sure that everyone that comes into your sphere is mutually committed to you, and you are able to give them more attention than if you are trying to make 20 proposals stick and 2 come through. I would rather have those 2 people pay the planning fee and give them so much more of my energy and time than slinging proposals and hoping one sticks. So if you are looking to transition to fees, first of all, educate your clients on the why, then incorporate it into your inquiry form and have them have an understand statement. Like, I understand that there will be a planning fee associated with this booking. It will be quoted to me on the intake call in accordance to the complexity of my trip. They hit, I understand, they move on. And then when you get to the Calendly email that sends it out to them and you say, I got your inquiry form. I'm so excited to work with you. Here are the next steps. Schedule a call to get on my calendar so I can fully understand the scope of your trip. You include a link. And then underneath that, you say, and now I've also attached a how we work guide that will tell you a little bit about our process. And on that how we work guide, you start to talk about your communication best practices and your fee structure. You don't even have to share numbers. You could just say, like, package options. And then on that Calendly, when they schedule it, reiterate, there will be a fee quoted to you based on the complexity of your trip. Boom. And they have to say, understand. So you're removing that awkward moment of when you get on the intake call and you are like, so there's been a change in how we work. There's now a planning fee. You could even say, in a targeted marketing campaign to return clients, you could say, I'm actually willing to waive your next fee, or I'm going to give a 50% return client discount because I appreciate your loyal business so much. So again, making it about them and appeasing to their loyalty, like appealing to that loyalty that they've had to you, I think is huge. And honestly, if you're a new advisor, I would follow those same steps. Like, you just introduce the concept before they ever get on the call. And then you don't have to feel awkward about quoting it. All you have to do is spit out your formulaic, fee that you can justify and you can stand behind. And if someone says, how did you get this fee? You actually have a justification for it. And that's actually a whole different topic of how you calculate based off of complexity. But those are the steps I would do in order to introduce the topic. And I realize that's like also incorporating a lot of process and boundaries, but that's just a jumping off point.
And that makes sense. And it makes you feel so much better to know, like, it's on my website and it's on the form that they filled out, and maybe they didn't read, but that's okay, because now, like, you're going to have this call that you're still going to make sure, like, oh, and then here's how it works. And you make it exciting because it's like, well, you're VIP to me. So, and so it's like, that makes it feel so much better. Like, it honestly feels no brainer at that point when you're like, oh yeah, that's easy to implement.
Well, and I want to say that not every advisor sells luxury, and that's okay. But every advisor is a luxury service. It is a luxury to outsource something. And so when you create exclusivity, it elevates you. And one, I think people really minimize the appeal of that. Like, when you create an exclusive service, or you start to say, I'm only taking on 2 clients a week, etc., people start to clamor for a spot because they're like, oh, wait, but I love working with you. I don't want to lose out on the opportunity. And so you're not going to get rid of all your clients. You may have clients self-select out, but they may not have been your ideal clients anyway.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Well, and I know a lot of times, like in our past conversations that we've had, like about fees, typically also, I mean, your fee is what's going to help weed out the bad, the ones that you don't want anyway. So it's like, this is great because you're like, or and also can help surprise and delight, because how you mentioned, like, you know what, we're gonna waive this one, or returning client like discount, like that's really cool too, that you always have that in your back pocket if you feel like you need to have something, like that, which is nice.
There are a lot of ways to use fees. I feel like, you could even charge a supplemental extra call fee, a cancellation fee, an itinerary change fee, an additional option for a proposal if they've tapped out the number of edits that you've allocated in your planning fee invoice. But to your point, Stephanie, like, you have the ability as the advisor to waive the fees and to surprise and delight and make someone feel special and be human. Like, a lot of these things make it very transactional, and a lot of advisors are like, no, I'm a very human approach. I understand that, but you're still a business. You can have fabulous service. You can have a high touch experience. You can still employ automation and set boundaries and charge your worth. And they are not mutually exclusive. So if anyone is needing that like permission slip signed off, that you can have a high touch experience and you can be very focused on service, but you can still pay your bills and live the quality of life that you want to live, then this is that permission slip. I'm signing it for you.
It's virtually through the ears signed. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's perfect. Oh, this is amazing. So I have two final things for you. Is one, can you share how you can be found at Teak and how people can find you to learn more about Teak?
Yes, absolutely. We have two ways of collaborating with us. One at teakhq.com. That's TIQUEHQ as in headquarters.com. And we have two sides of our business. We have a services and product side, and that's where we have our custom brand service, our custom client experience service, as well as our client communication templates, which we've actually done a demo with Stephanie on the Facebook Live on how to integrate those with Travefy, which is fabulous. And we also have our semi-custom branding product as well. The other side of our business is our niche community. And this is where we have our revolving resources and the fee calculator, actually, that I like kind of referenced on how you take a formulaic approach while you're on that intake call based on the complexity of the trip. That's one of our resources in there for Q1. We also have courses, and our 7-figure sales course talks all about everything in here. So we have various products and various ways of finding us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And all of the fees. I mean, like you said, we can go into so many different areas, and this
could be a day.
Oh yeah, it literally could be fee in a day. Like there's so much in there.
A fee
and I'll
boot camp, Stephanie. Think about that.
I know, that's true. The fee boot. I like this. Oh, all of the ideas. And I'll put in the show notes too, by the way, of our for the Facebook Live that we had. So that way, if anyone, because that goes into fees because you're dealing with forms and in slight plug in Travefy, you can make an e-signature form that requires them to set up the fee agreement. It's perfect. And you can collect fees in Travefy as well. So you can do all of that in there. So I'll throw that in the show notes too. So you guys can scroll down and find that. But before we go, so I don't know if you knew that we do this, but we have rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay. I did not. I've listened and I think I heard one rapid fire, but I was not emotionally prepared.
Yes, I know. I know. That's why it's so funny. And we, you never know. Sometimes, because there's some episodes where we don't have them. So, but this one, Jennifer, I'm giving you this one. Oh, you're getting rapid fire. They are going to be great. And there's 6 of them. Okay. All travel related. Here we go. First one. What is your favorite travel movie?
Eat, Pray, Love.
Nice. That's a good one. That is a good one right there. Another question here is, what is your favorite destination you've traveled to?
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is always hard. Like the hardest one.
I know. I'm going to give a simple answer, but it's different. So I have to give the different sides of a personality, right? So like complete relaxation, I'm going to say Bora Bora. as well as Hermitage Bay in Antigua. Those are my like happy places for relaxation. When it comes to like constantly being stimulated and feeling completely like myself and like I could just walk down the streets forever, it's always going to be Florence, Italy. Find me in Florence any day of the week. I have my 13th trip to Italy booked. So I will always go back, and it's like an annual thing. So
Oh, it's amazing. Yes, Florence is, it's truly magical. And I always forget you like wine too. Oh, I
yes.
need you to plan me a trip to Italy sometime.
Ooh,
I need to do
Stephanie,
this. Yes.
be careful what
All of my favorite things. Like, oh, amazing. Okay, so well, a little flip on that question is, what do you think is the most underrated destination to visit?
Malta.
Malta, okay. I haven't
It's
gotten that one before. Nice.
incredible. It's incredible. The food is decadent. The wine is incredible. The scenery is unmatched. The water is so crystal blue. Everything is still a little untapped, although it's definitely rising on the radar, but it's at a really lovely price point as well.
That's a good one. I like that. Okay, so now on food wise, is what would you say is the best meal that you've had while traveling?
Okay. I'm going to plug my favorite place. My happy place is Quarcetto di Castellina in Castellina in Chianti. And Mary Shea and Jacopo at Quarcetto, they have a 600-year-old room that operates as like a private wine cellar dining space. And they only can accommodate up to 6, maybe 8 people in this space. And I surprised my best friend's husband. They were traveling with us, the two of them. We surprised him with a night at the vineyard, first of all. And then the second surprise was this beautiful dinner there. And it's a 3-course wine pairing dinner that they do. And it's just lovely because the hospitality, the space, and the food are just homey, cozy, and amazing.
Sounds amazing. I love that. My stomach is grumbling now. Sounds awesome. Okay, so next question. You have 2 left here. One is what is the last great book or article that you read?
Oh my gosh.
And it doesn't have to be travel related either.
So I'm a big, when it comes to books, I'm more of like a self-help developmental person. So right now I'm reading Unreasonable Hospitality, and it is stellar. I'm huge into podcasts, so it's hard for me to like pinpoint. I don't have much time to read right now, but Audible books. I also, this is a surprising one. It dabbles on political, but it has nothing to do with the politics, I assure you. I loved Megyn Kelly's Settle for More. I picked it up randomly. I was not a Megyn Kelly fan, but it just, you know how you sometimes pick up a book at a certain time in your life and it speaks to everything you need to hear?
Yeah.
That was that. And I didn't even really know who she was. And it just said like bestseller. And I was at Barnes and Noble and I just picked it up. And so a lot of lessons about just motivation and life and always striving for more resonate from that book.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What's a podcast that you like? Or
I
like what's
love
your favorite ones?
Yeah, I love listening to Old Money with Amber Frankhusen because I'm really
Yeah.
into like thinking about retirement investment and safeguarding any hard work, that you're working towards this to create a life for your family. So I love that. I also love How I Built This, business podcasts. I'm not really great at like funny podcasts. It's usually like something for me to feel productive on a walk. I like to maximize my time.
I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm only going to listen to it if I feel like I'm going to get something. And and that makes sense that you like that podcast after the conversation we just had about strategizing the money,
Yes,
where it's flowing, how it's working. It's perfect. Makes sense. I like it. Now, okay, final question here for you is what is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you while traveling? That's going to be good.
So this is so hard, actually. I feel like I need like a library, but um, you know, Okay, I'm going to go back to this because this is not a funny one. I'm sure I could go funny with it. I'm not going to go funny with it. I'm going to go like lesson learned with it. The craziest trust your gut moment, and this is wild because this actually circles back, Stephanie, to the book you just asked me. So in this book, she experienced a stalker in her profession, and she mentioned a book that changed her life, which was The Gift of Fear. So I ended up reading The Gift of Fear. And I think every woman, every young woman should read The Gift of Fear and probably read it on an annual basis. Like it's just about how we train ourselves to be polite over trusting our gut. And so I was in Croatia and I asked the server for a taxi, as I often do. And I do that in Italy because they don't have Uber. But in Croatia, they have Uber. And I wasn't really thinking about that. And I was with a friend and we had just had, a winey dinner. We had wined it up. And he like kept on also bringing us like shots at the end of dinner. And I'm not a shot person, but it was like a post dinner kind of
Like
like a port, yeah, or something like that. And he was just on the phone a little too long for my comfort. And I just got that trust your gut moment. I had literally like serendipitously just read The Gift of Fear. And I looked at my friend and I was like, we're going to leave now. And she was like, yep. And even in our like wine dinner vibe, the like great vibe we had going on, we just got up and left. And of course, right outside, this is in Dubrovnik, right outside the walls, there's a line of taxis. All he had to say was walk 50 feet out there and a taxi will be waiting for you. So that's just kind of like a lesson learned of like, I now know, always trust your gut, stay sober and aware of your surroundings. I would never put myself in a compromising situation. And I would definitely say we were not in a compromising situation. But I think it's really easy to happen when you're out and about and you're feeling the relaxation of a beautiful place. It's easy to kind of like lose yourself in the moment. And so just keeping your wits about you was really important. So
That's so important. I've read that too. And I agree. It was years ago. And I really it is a book that you need to read all the time because you don't think about it all the time until something happens. And then you're like, oh, yeah, what did that say? Like, I feel like something's happening here, but I'm not sure. Like, it's really interesting.
It's so instinctual, right? Like, I found myself multiple times being aware of something that I would not have been had I not been like trained to retrain myself, I guess. Like you as especially as young women, I think we're taught to be nice a lot. And I was actually just saw a reel on this today where it's like, go hug Aunt Mildred, like you better do it, young lady, or something like that. And we're just kind of like conditioned to think that like we have to be polite. We don't always have autonomy over our body. And just that Gift of Fear book really helped me be much more in tune with when something feels off, even if it's slight. Just be aware of how you're feeling because it's usually right.
Yeah, which is crazy. It's like the gift of fear. It's like, yeah, and especially traveling, like that's a big one too. Like your example's perfect. It's very easy to lose yourself and you want to, like you just want to relax and not have to worry about anything. But unfortunately,
the world is the world.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like, it didn't tarnish my experience, but I was, we were smart. We got out of the situation. We took a taxi home, finished our night in a beautiful hotel room that they had upgraded us to. And it was all fine and dandy. It's just like, keep your head on a swivel, be smart about it. And a lot of people in this industry are traveling alone to go on FAMs. So it's just a testament to, trusting your gut, being aware, and always be smart.
Another podcast episode idea is safety when traveling. Because it is true. There's all the time our conferences, FAMs, always there's many times where you're by yourself.
And there's wearable devices that are really subtle now. It doesn't have to be a phone. It doesn't have to be, there's actually a company called Invisaware, and they make these really beautiful they look like gold pendants, and it just has a button on the back that you hold down or you double tap, and they've connected it with ADT, and like sends out like 7 different alerts, one to the police, one to ADT. Like it's really interesting. So there are things like that that you can utilize. You can always share your destination when you're in an Uber. You can take a picture of the license plate as you get into a taxi, which has like, now we can share our images so easily that it can be backed up to a drive. So things like that, I would just say, yes, that's a whole podcast episode.
It is. Yeah. Fees and safety. These are the two things. Yes. No, this has been really great. I love chatting with you. It's always so fun to have you on here and sharing so much of your knowledge with us. And again, I'll put everything in the show notes too, the link to your website and all that stuff. But thank you so much again for everyone tuning in to this episode of the Lounge of Travefy Academy. And of course, thank you to our special guest, Jennifer, for joining us here today. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of the latest episodes. And we hope you enjoyed our conversation today and join us again. But for now, stay safe very much, and we'll catch you on the next flight.